Carly, and welcome back to my channel. I am coming at you today with my first wrap-up of the year, which sounds so weird. I'm so used to doing these on the monthly thing, but I'm really glad that I went to this. It's not as much pressure, and I haven't been like so focused on the numbers of my reading, which is good. I'm not stressed about it. And also, I only read like 2 things in January, so that wouldn't have worked out very well. But I have finally reached 8 items to talk to you guys about, so that is what I'm going to do today. I'm just going to do this in the order of which I read things. So first up to bat. That saying doesn't really work here. First is Into the Drowning. This is a horror novel about mermaids, essentially. So basically we follow a group that is kind of going out into the deep sea in order to learn about an expedition that went wrong years before that. Basically this expedition went out and they were in search of, I don't even know what. They were just trying to prove the existence of something, but they all disappeared. And there was footage that there were like these mer people that had attacked them, and everyone was trying to say that like they were fake and whatnot. But we do follow one character. She is the sister of one of the people that had died on this expedition, so she wants to figure out the truth. So we follow her as well as several other characters who kind of have some sort of link to the previous disastrous thing, and some of them are there to kind of prove it right. Some of them think they're going to prove it wrong, and then they get out there, and pretty early on, some shit goes down. This is a pretty thick book. It was pretty thick, but it did not let up on the suspense. I thought all the characters were developed pretty well for the most part. I will say it took me pretty much the whole book to figure out who was who, though. That was probably my biggest downfall with this, was that I just could not figure, like the cast was too large for me, and I had a really hard time figuring out who the heck was who. So if you need to make notes, I definitely would have benefited from some notes about who the characters are. I really enjoyed this though. It was definitely spooky. One of my biggest fears is like the deep, dark waters, and this goes into that, and it's very ruthless. It's ruthless. It does not care. It doesn't care about your feelings or who you like. Shauna McGuire just said, no, I don't care about killing people. So go into it knowing that it is gory. Once they get into contact with these mermaids, they're kind of trying to learn their hunting patterns and whatnot, so they don't die. And it was just really interesting if you're looking for kind of a suspenseful but also kind of different kind of read, because this is my first time reading mermaids in like a really scary setting. I did end up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars just because my enjoyment was there, but at times I definitely felt confused as all hell. Next is a graphic novel, and that is Bloom. This is the only 5-star read that I have had for the year so far, and it was so stinking good. It was so cute. Bloom follows this young man who he wants to go away with his band and move to the city, and that they are going to be super successful, but basically his family needs him to help out at the family bakery, and he is just like so against it. He hates being there. He thinks that his family is holding him back. So he tries to hire someone else in his place. So he's like, if I can find someone that can take my place, can I go off and like start a band, basically. So he ends up coming across this other young man who has come into town because he is cleaning out I believe it is his grandma's house, and after she has passed, so he's kind of getting his affairs in order there. He ends up taking kind of a summer job at the bakery, and the two just really come together. It is such a cute read because it shows them kind of developing, but also into some of the pains that they have and overcoming those things. I will say that the friend group of the one guy is not, I hated them. I just wanted to punch them all in the face. I thought that they were really insensitive at times and just were annoying, and I just wanted to be like, you need better friends. You need better friends. And I will say that the one character I felt was a little overdramatic and kind of immature at times compared to the other character, but for the most part, this is such a cute story, and I loved it so much. and I cried, and it just warmed my heart. It's a fairly thick looking graphic novel, but I flew through it in no time. It's a very quick read, very easy, and the artwork is beautiful. If you are a fan of Heartstopper, read Bloom, cause you will love it. But that was my only 5-star read so far this year. Next is Clap When You Land. I don't know what I was expecting going into this. I don't know if I just like had never really listened to anyone's synopsi when they were talking about this book. I don't really know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this, and I don't know why. I think I had some idea in my head and it just ended up not being that, but that was fine. It was okay because this turned out so great. So this is told in verse, right? I always get verse and prose mixed up. I'm pretty sure it's not prose because I always say prose. Oh my god, prose is just like written word. I'm having a brain fart. So anyway, this is told in verse, and this is 2 different characters. One lives in the Dominican Republic and the other one lives in New York, and their father was on a plane and the plane goes down and crashes and there are no survivors from the plane crash. So the thing is though, they don't know about each other. So we are from 2 different points of views of 2 girls who have lost the same father without knowing it, and how it is so different. Their lives are so extremely different, not only in like where they live and the environments that they grew up, but also in how they kind of looked at their father. And was he a role model? Was he not? Like, what did he do for this one that he didn't do for this one? And things like that. And it is a story about 2 sisters coming together and kind of figuring it out. So even though, like, the synopsis tells you, like, right off the bat everything that's going to happen, it still doesn't make it any less enjoyable. This is a story about emotion, the emotion that these characters were feeling, and normally I would say that stories in verse are not really my thing. However, this is it. This is it. Because it just invokes so much emotions at times, and I was feeling the pain that they were feeling, and I was feeling the betrayal, and I was feeling the hurt and the loss and all those things, because it is just so written out so beautifully and poetically, and it makes for a quicker read on top of that. But I think if you can get a story across in that type of format and in such an impactful way, that's amazing. That is amazing. So I thought this did a really good job at portraying those different emotions and whatnot that were surrounding this very complicated family. I gave it a 4.5, and I think it's just because most of the time when I go into books with verse, it just tends to be missing just a little bit of something for me, and I don't know what it is. I have no clue. I can't ever put my finger on it. I don't know, 4.5 just made sense in my head. Okay, so then I ended up reading Mexican Gothic. I started this in October. Yeah, it wasn't that I wasn't interested in this. I am just a very picky mood reader, and it has gotten much worse recently. And I was only reading an audiobook, so I was waiting for the audiobook to become available in order to read it. So finally it did. If you don't know, this is about a young, strong, independent woman. Her cousin got married and has moved away, and she ends up sending a distress letter to our main lead character, and basically is like, you know, something weird is happening. Come help. So she goes down to where her cousin now lives, and she married into this family that lives in this very old, rich mansion. Like, they have a long history. The family has a long history of just money and whatnot. They used to run some mines. And so she gets to this mansion, and it's very clearly that, like, this mansion has never been updated. It's gross and creepy and dark and smells kind of musty, and there's, like, mold everywhere. But the family is very uppity and has their rules, and they expect her to follow by the rules, and she's just like, I don't think so. I don't think so. Something's going on here. And even though they tell her, everything's fine, don't worry about it, she's like, yeah, I don't trust any of you. So she kind of goes and does her own thing anyway. So the atmosphere in this book is so creepy. So creepy, because you're in this, like, rotting mansion, and you can just, like, smell the dampness of it, and you can feel it. Like, I could feel the moisture in the air at times, and it just like creeped me out. And I could picture, I think that she just did such a good job really describing each room and the things that were happening and whatnot. I will say, there's not really any likable characters in this. Our main character is about it. There is a character that she becomes friendly with who is like the only one in the estate that is friendly with her. The rest of them are just kind of weird and, you know, have their own kind of way of doing things. And they're very manipulative. So there's some really gross things happening, some really weird things happening, and I'm not going to spoil it, but, you know, there's some weird stuff happening. I did think that this was a little slower, which was fine, and it was just very descriptive, very atmospheric, and I really enjoyed our main character and how she got to things. I will say some things at times felt, she was supposed to be this strong, independent character, and it was at times, it was like things felt like they were looking her in the face. Like the answer was there, and she just kind of was like, I don't know what it could be. And I'm just like, it's right there. It's right there. Well, maybe if I was in that situation, I would not know. But for the most part, I thought that this was a really well written, just an overall really creepy story on top of that. And I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The one that I read was Across the Greengrass Fields. And this is the latest in the Wayward Children series. It is also technically like a starting point in the series. It is a standalone. You can read it separate of the other things. And I will say that you absolutely could read it separate of the other things, because it doesn't really deal with the Wayward Children house. It doesn't deal with any of the other worlds. It is all its own story. We follow one character, and we see as a very young girl that she feels that she has to fit into a box of society and what they think that she should be in order to be a proper girl. So she grows up thinking that she witnesses some bullying happening to people who do not fit into this standard box, and she grows up and finds out that she is actually intersex and wants to escape that because that's not how she feels. And she goes through just like this, of course, very confusing point where she's like, that's not how I feel, that's not what I want, and kind of runs off. And of course, a door opens to her. This door is full of, are they centaurs? Or they're half human, like half horse type things. So she goes into this world, and if you like horse girl vibes, this is all horse girl vibes. This is it. If you are a horse girl, here's the book for you. I personally don't care about those things, and I will say this was probably my least favorite in the series so far. I really love there is a found family and kind of the growing friendship and seeing her grow older and really coming to terms with herself, but I do think that there was a lot more complicated feelings that were just kind of dismissed as whatever, especially when it came to the fact that like this door opened and she was very dismissive of her parents, despite the fact that like she loved her parents and her parents loved her and there wasn't really an issue there. So it felt very dismissive of some things at times that I felt like probably should have been handled at some point, not just like skimmed over. Mediocre. The story was kind of mediocre. You kind of already know it is a hero kind of story arc, and I don't know. I just overall wasn't super impressed. It was still an enjoyable story. I still love seeing these different worlds. I love hearing about the doors, and I do think Shauna Maguire writes really great segments that talk about just like looking in at what you're feeling and the things that you are feeling in a moment. And I do think that she writes really great self-reflection, character growth fairly well. The ending of this one was also a letdown. I don't think it needed to happen. It just felt a little inconsistent for what I kind of was expecting of this type of book because of how many we've had so far. So I think I only gave this a 3. I only gave it a 3.5. Looking back on it, I do think that it was quite forgettable and it wasn't something that I super love. So I have a 3.5, but I might drop that to a 3 just because looking back on it, there were some things that I just was like, about. Like, this is definitely the most meh in the series for me. Sure, it can be a starting point if you want it to be, and then the rest can get better from there, in my opinion. So, next Next we have a Life on Our Planet, and I am obsessed with nature documentaries, if you did not know, and Sir David Attenborough is just like, I love him. I love him. I love his voice, and I just love the different kind of documentaries that he puts out, and this was a book that he wrote about the state of the Earth, basically, and life on our Earth, and basically global warming, amongst other things, and really just delved into the topics of what's happening to the Earth, and estimates kind of like how long we have with the Earth until things just kind of start collapsing, and different ways that we can change those, like based around recycling and energy and farming and the way we eat and the things that we consume and the things that we buy, and like really went into different parts of life and different ways that society and different places can change in order to make the change that needs to happen in order to stop global warming and to stop essentially the destruction of the Earth. Sir David Attenborough, paraphrasing, he didn't say these words exactly, but he basically said, eat the rich and women deserve equal rights because it's good for the Earth. So I'm here for it, but I found this such an interesting read. It's not very long. It's very to the point. It's not like overcomplicated. It's very easy to understand, because I think that tends to be my hesitation when it comes to these types of books, is that I'm terrified I'm not going to understand what's going on. But this was just so good. So good. I just really enjoyed this. I feel like I learned a lot. Really enlightening read, and it's definitely made me reflect on the things that I do in life and, you know, things that I would like to change. So I give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It doesn't go into a lot of what I guess the average person can do. A lot of it is based around like companies and corporations and different groups of people and what they can do. So keep that in mind though. It's not like necessarily like here are the steps to making the Earth better. It's just like suggestions, things that are working, things like that. So the Midnight Library, this received so many good reviews, so many people raving about this. It was on so many people's like best reads of last year. All my coworkers basically were like, you gotta read this. So I did. This is about a woman who commits suicide. She has just had not a fun life. She basically thinks that she's worthless because all these things could have happened and she just chose not to do them, and now she's living a life that she feels like has no worth. So she commits suicide and she goes to the Midnight Library. The Midnight Library is like this place between life and death, and you can try different stories. There's different books and you can try them on. And if you really like a story, you can stay there, essentially. And so she goes to see how every decision in her life could have been different. And so she's trying out these different decisions in her life and seeing which ones would have fit better. So she can see every mistake that she made or anything that she turned down, she can go back and see how that would have turned out. And it was interesting because, of course, you get to see how each part of her life turned out, but you also get to see what she lost because of the choices that she made. So in the things that she gained, what did she lose? And I do think that the overall story is quite predictable, and I will say that I do think it is quite shallow for the type of topic that this is. It's a very light-hearted read for what it is. It doesn't delve too deep into the emotions of any of this or anything. It's just like, this is how life could have been, and, you know, this happened, and it doesn't deal with those types of feelings or consequences or anything. It kind of is just like, this is what would have happened, and then moves on. So it's not an overly deep book. It's very easy. Yeah. I think for the subject matter that it just didn't delve into it enough for me. It was quite surface level type stuff. So that was probably my biggest issue with it, is that I just wish it would have been a little deeper at times. Yeah, still really enjoyable, really great writing for the most part, and you just can't help but root for the character and all see the different lives and kind of wonder the different lives that you could have. So I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. Again, enjoyable. And then the last book that I have for this wrap up is The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water. This is a very short book, novella. One thing that I wasn't expecting was that this was very religious heavy. So we follow a woman who is a follower of the Order of the Pure Moon. And she basically was in her, I can't remember what they called it, if it was a temple or school or what, but she was kind of at the school where they did this for her whole life. And then basically all the people in her temple were slaughtered, and there is kind of a silent war happening. She's working in a coffee house one day, and a bandit comes in, and she ends up following the bandit and kind of joining his group of bandits. And the bandits are known for kind of selling trades and whatnot, and she wants to come along. And along the way, you know, some friendships are made, some things are revealed, and it was a pretty interesting story. I was lost a little at times. There's some martial arts involved as well, and they kind of go to do this delivery and things go awry and some other things happen, but you're kind of getting a little into their friendships and their dynamics and the way that this world works. It is a very small glimpse into how this world is. The situation just ends up way more complicated than any of them I think ever thought it was going to be. And the ending was quite a surprise, and the friendships that are made I think are quite a surprise. And I enjoyed it for the most part. I thought it was a very quick read. I, you know, had to keep going to see what was going to happen, how they were going to get out of the messes that they were in. But there isn't a lot of world building. It's kind of just hinted at, and I just feel like I was a little confused at times, which is more on me than probably the book is. I gave it a 3.5. I thought the writing was really great, and I enjoyed the characters, but at the end of the day, it just was, I don't know. I don't know if it just wasn't long enough for me, if it didn't go into enough world building, if the relationships just weren't there fully for me, but I think it just could have been beefed up a little bit and been a really fantastic story. So that is it for my first wrap-up. These are the books that I actually read in January and February. It worked out that way. There are 2 items that I have not included in this. One was a reread, which was a Court of Wings and Ruin. I did include that. Figure you guys don't really need to know about that. And the other one is a manga. Eventually, I do plan on doing manga wrap-ups separately, so I'm just holding off on that for now. Anyway, let me know some of the things that you have read recently. Have you read any of these things? Did you enjoy them? Did you not? Did your thoughts line up? Tell me your thoughts and feelings. Let me know. Did you have a 5-star read yet? Because I'm waiting. I feel like I haven't had a really great 5-star read yet. We'll see. Hope you guys have liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to see future wrap-ups from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next one. Bye.